Welcome! You are listening to Beneath the Surface podcast with your host, Carter Russell.
This episode, Carter is joined by Adrain D'Amico. Adrian is a podcast host and personal growth coach. He helps others break through the barriers that hold them back, allowing them to achieve their goals with confidence. He is passionate about leading others to live a life filled with purpose and fulfillment. This episode starts with Adrian sharing how he came to embody what he teaches today through a number of tough experiences in business and being ostracized throughout the COVID pandemic. Carter and Adrian then discuss how he helps others today by identifying what is holding them back, overcoming self-limiting beliefs, finding purpose, how to get clear on your values, adopting an abundant mindset, overcoming adversity, what Adrian has learnt from his podcast, and much more. Stick around for today's rapid fire round. It's a potent one. Let's begin.
Adrain D'Amico, welcome to Beneath the Surface podcast.
Carter, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
First episode with the golden mics.
I love them.
How does it feel to be in the guest chair? You're usually the interviewer.
The interviewer, yeah, that's right. It feels good. It's definitely not familiar, that's for sure, and something that I want to do more of. So I really appreciate this opportunity, and yeah, but I like it. I like having conversations like this. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, cool. I love being in the interview chairs too. It's fun. It's fun talking about yourself.
Sure.
When you reflect on your life, what is the first chapter that comes to mind of your story?
That's a deep question first up. I don't think there's any first chapter, but I do reflect on the moments that were pivotal points. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. What was your first pivotal point then?
Yeah, so I think growing up, there's probably a number of things that kind of made you think a little bit different. So when I reflect on my childhood, for example, there was a lot of ostracizing and being casted aside as the delinquent child and the person that's most likely to be the troublemaker. So that was a branding, so to speak. So I remember a time in primary school, and this is kind of where I lead with this, is a large part of when I say to myself, what is the thing that I really want to do, or the thing that I'm really good at, when I start to articulate in a way of thinking, could I pin this down to maybe one thing that I do? And the one thing that I do is I like to teach, and I like to lead, and I like to coach, and I like to direct, and kind of be that person that shows someone what to do. So then when I go back into a memory, and the memory is that there was kindergarten kids, and they were we need someone to show them around the school. And they go, oh, Adrian, you go and do it. And so looking back at it, I was just thinking, well, they got me out of the class because I was the one that paid the least attention, caused the most trouble. And so it was I'll get rid of the shitty kid. Yeah. But in actual fact, what it did was it gave me a position to lead, to teach, to, show people around the school. Yeah. So I might have been 4 at the time, but I'm, I wouldn't say 4, let's say 6, 7, 8, whatever it is at the time. I'm probably in year 4, I would say. So that's another example. The one would be we need someone to demonstrate something about the environment and about those sorts of things. So they'd be pick someone who can speak to the class about it. So I'd be chosen. So again, in my mind, I'm they're just choosing me because I'm the least educated. I do the worst at school.
Right, that was the story you were telling yourself. That's what the story was back then, and now you've reflected and you see that they were actually choosing you because you're a great leader. Is that what you're saying? I
think it's more of the world's way of showing you that these are the steps that, if you want to speak esoterically,
sure.
These are the universe's way of saying education is not something that you might be great at, but you're great at all of these other skills. And so we're going to give you lessons to kind of do that. right? And so it gave me opportunities to lead and to coach and to teach and to direct people. And so I just became really good at the skill of directing all of those things. And I can pinpoint moments like that all through my life, through my working life, through business and all that kind of stuff. So to me, when I look back, it's like there's no question as to why I'm gravitating towards the role that I'm playing now, which is to coach and to lead and to work for myself. Like I haven't worked for anyone, for over 20 years. Like I just, you could take that in many different directions in terms of like me not liking authority and all that kind of stuff. And I certainly showed that throughout the, the pandemic and all those sorts of things. But that's kind of like my strength now. My strength is to lead and to coach. And my strength is I get a lot of enjoyment out of imparting information, knowledge, wisdom, learnings, from all the things that I've done. I can say, well, this is what I did in that moment. This is how I would improve your life, your business, your relationships, whatever it may be, your career. And it's drawing upon my own life experiences. So a long-winded question, like long-winded answer is, those moments are the moments that I think back on where it seemed like a setback, but it was a steer in the direction that I needed to go.
Yeah, cool. It's such great awareness to go back to that and look at it that way and see the stepping stones and how that ultimately led to your gift and your purpose. I think that's the hard part about finding your purpose is going back and kind of collecting what was I good at, what am I good at, and that's something I want to dive into with you maybe a bit later. I want to talk a little bit about your experience with business and going through the motions with that into, I guess, being the coach you are today as well.
Yeah. Well, I still am in business.
Are you still in business? Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, where do you want to go with that? Like why I got into business or?
Yeah, sure. Why did you get into business?
I started reading books at a very young age. And the catalyst for that was that my mum joined Amway, right? And every week they would send home a book or a tape. So I don't know if you're old enough to remember what tapes are, but
I don't, yeah.
So it's one of these things where each time she would come home, there'd be a book, and the book would be like something by Wayne Dyer. It'd be like you can. I'm trying to think of like a book titles. You'll see it when you believe it by Wayne Dyer. So it was a tape. Actually, it was a cassette.
So you'd listen to the book,
so
like audio book.
You'd listen to the cassette. Yeah, that's right.
Oh wow!
Yeah. Crazy, right?
Yeah.
So there was things like that. There used to be infomercials on TV where this guy, I think his name was like Kevin Trudeau or something like that. It's called Mega Memory. So again, like my mum was like always this type of person who would buy every tape program, Ab Doer, Ab Roller, Ab Cruncher, like all those things on the Danos Direct. She'd always buy those things, and so. The benefit of that was that I was always reading and looking at self-development and things like that. So there's probably a few things that joined together. In terms of like self-improvement, that was always happening in the background. So I was always listening to all these hypnosis. There was this guy called Marshall Silver, and he had this like 15 cassettes on how to hypnotize yourself for better wealth, finances, career, all that kind of stuff. So I would sit there in my car, right, and I would listen to these cassettes, or I'd have my cassette player and I would listen to them. So that was from the age of 13 right through to like 17. So by the time 17, 18 come around, I'd already left school. I was already working as an apprentice, and I'd always had ambitions of doing something for myself. My parents were self-employed and all that kind of stuff. So I think it was, again, like there's just no question why I would get into doing something for yourself or working on my own. But the catalyst was I was reading Robert Kiyosaki's book. There was a whole series of books that Robert Kiyosaki had. So Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Cash Flow Quadrant, all that kind of stuff. So he said a passage in one of the books that was like, get a job for what you can learn, not for what you can earn. And I was in the building industry. I'd done an apprenticeship, but not really liked it, and I wasn't really so I'm not academically minded. I kind of failed more on the academics of it than I did on the construction of things. If you show me how to do it, that's fine. Tell me to work out mathematical equations and I can't do it. Or at least I couldn't. So I thought to myself, well, I like property and I like developing and things like that. So maybe real estate would be a good business to get into. So I got a job in real estate and really loved it. I loved dealing with people. I loved the fact that you could wear shirts and ties and drive a nice car and all those sorts of things, because I've been working in gyms up until that point.
Gotcha.
So yeah, there's kind of like up until the age of like 22, 3, I had like 30 jobs, just being like bouncing from one thing to another. So it was at that point where I worked for a couple of years for a couple of agencies, and then I had an opportunity to buy one, and I did. So I leveraged off the unit that we bought our first business, and that was the kind of entry point to all of that, and the catalyst of me wanting to run my own show.
Yeah, that's cool. I love how your mum was like priming your subconscious brain from 13 to 17 with all these hypnosis stuff. That's awesome. So you said that you had like a few jobs before you got into real estate as well. Do you think that's, if someone was looking to find their purpose, do you think that's almost a necessary step, like a process of elimination to go, okay, well, I don't want to be a chef. I don't want to be a tradie. I don't want to be a gym. Like, do you think that you need to try these things to ultimately work out that's not what you want to do? Or
yeah, that's a good question. I don't know if it's necessary, but I can definitely draw upon my own life experience and say that there's nothing wrong with zigging and zagging. I talk about this a lot in my own coaching, where people go, I'm trying something and it just hasn't worked, and I'm trying something else and it just hasn't worked. So there's a few layers to all of that in terms of why it doesn't seem to be working, or whether you're on the wrong path or the right path. And you could argue whether that is the case or not. But I think there's merit in not analyzing something to the degree that you don't do anything about it and you stay stationary or stay in the one job or the one career opportunity just because your HSC marks determined that that's what you should get. Your dad was a plumber, so now you're a plumber, all those sorts of things. You're just following the footsteps of what society says is the right thing to do. So I think that in my own personal experience, I did this and that and everything. Like I've worked in corporate life, I've worked in gyms, I've worked in building, I've worked in construction, I've done security work. Like there's just so many things that I've done. And I used to, when I was applying for jobs, like right up until my early 20s, I used to delete most of them in terms of putting on my resume, because it was such a long list of jobs.
Yeah, people think you're going to hover
They just think, this guy's only good for like 3 to 6 months and then he's gone. But I think the merit of all of that is discovering things about yourself. So the things that I've learned along the way, I'm now applying into my everyday life anyway. And in hindsight, the benefit that I have now is like I've just recently started all over again. A few things happened in the pandemic. There's a lot of stuff that come undone. We were just talking off air of losing a lot of friends during that time, right? So I lost, a business and a marriage. And so, I'm at a point now, like I'm starting again at 45, but as cliche as it sounds, you're starting again with a bunch of knowledge, not from scratch. You're starting again with hindsight, with skills, with a lay of the land that you are now familiar with and that you weren't before. And so you can kind of recreate yourself, this new version of yourself that is congruent with the new version that you want to project into the world. And that's mostly what I'm all about now is giving people the encouragement and the coping mechanisms and the intelligence and the emotional resilience in order to say, hey, like setbacks are not all that they are cracked up to be. And I've had injuries and I've had, hospitalizations, and I've been, like I said, I've gone through all of this stuff, and that's just the half of it in terms of my life experience. But here I am, and I've got heaps of energy and I've got heaps of vitality and a lifetime ahead of me to right any wrong that I foresee was a negative experience in the past, and do the right thing. Like I can correct it from this day on. And I think that's a very important position for people to realize.
Yeah, I love that. I think when we look at the hero's journey, usually when someone gets their gift, or when they realize their gift, it comes from a period of darkness or great pain, and getting through that has given them that gift. For the work that you do today, was there a significant rock bottom or a significant darkness that you went through, which ultimately put you in a position to learn what you teach today? And would you mind sharing on what that was?
Of course. Yeah, it was the COVID pandemic. It was fucking wild. Like I had just I started my coaching business. So back in 2015, I was in real estate. I had owned real estate for nearly 10 years. It was like 9 years and 7 months or something like that. Sold that business. Was on top of the planet because we made a really good profit. I took the family overseas twice. Like it was a good time. It was 10 years of like hard work, and there was highs and lows and all those sorts of things. But I really felt like that was the next stepping stone to gaining another level in business and wealth and all those sorts of things. So I had an idea for a long time, and I used to talk about it, which is called an indoor skate park. And I just said, like, I'm going to open up. Like, I used to say, it would be great to open up an indoor skate park because here I am with my kids. I like to skate and, relive my youth as much as possible. And I'm in the outdoor parks and I can't get a coffee and my head's frying in the sun. There's no shade, all that kind of stuff. And there's a lot of delinquents around and, less desirable kids. And I want to bash them half the time because they're, they're not doing the right thing, or, I'm getting... And I'm also worried about them smashing into my children. And, it was like a real on edge experience. I thought if only we had an indoor skate park, it'd be such an amazing idea. So I was out and about. My wife at the time calls me and says, I just watched this article on like 7 News or something like that or whatever. And this guy in Adelaide did your idea. And so I was like, oh, fuck, like I really have a fear of missing out. Like a lot of my life is based on FOMO. It's like, I don't want to have an idea and then not pursue it. And I don't want to be the guy that talks about the idea that they had that someone else did. The guy at the bar is always talking about, I came up with that idea first, but they stole it and all that shit. Gotcha. I don't want to be that guy, right? And I have this theory that the universe is like a collective energy of, thoughts and vibrations and things like that. So if I come up with an idea, which I feel is a download, well, that universal energy will flow everywhere. And if you don't act on it and the universe rewards action, then it's just going to go, I'm just going to give that idea to Carter, and then see who's going to act on that idea. So I thought, this is my moment. I've been fucking around with this for like 10 years. I don't want to do it anymore. I'm going to pull the trigger on this and make it happen. I'd already had connections in that entertainment space. So a mate of mine I had already done work for. When I left my real estate business, the first email that I sent was to say, hey, listen, I am no longer in real estate. I'm coaching on social media, marketing, all these sorts of things in terms of consulting. And so I will help your business grow from the lessons that I've learned in the last 10 years. The very first client that I had owned entertainment businesses that were like, rock climbing and laser arena and all this kind of stuff and trampoline parks. So that was my first client.
Wow, there's the universe saying, here you go.
Off you go. So when this opportunity came along, it was, all right, you've got the contacts and the connections to make that happen. So I basically hired him as a consult to help me bring this idea to life. And we did. And the thing is that it was amazing. The whole journey, I documented the whole thing. In terms of manifesting abundance and money and all that kind of stuff. And after all these setbacks, we traveled around Australia, looked at different parks and sort of picked the eyes out of what the business model was going to be the best thing. And we got a design team from America, flew them over from America, designed the park, put it all together, opened with a bang. And at that time, COVID was happening. So I opened in January 10, but by March 28, we were shut. So...
wow.
2 things happened at that time. I was dying the death of 1,000 paper cuts because this business was another level that I'd never been into. So I went from hiring 5 staff in real estate to 28 staff in the indoor skate park. So it's exponential in terms of the amount of workload and different level of business that I had experienced too. So it was shut down. So I was already like internally suffering because I had everything riding on this. The whole box and dice was all on this particular business. The other thing that was happening was I knew, and this may still to this day ruffle a few feathers, but I just knew that that virus wasn't what they were saying it was. And when they were shutting down businesses, I just knew that you can't shut down economies without having a detrimental effect, not only just on the economy itself, as in how money flows, but money, like it affects everything that you do. And so when I saw that as such an injustice and such a shitty move and a dumb move. So I started speaking out about it. And I started speaking out about the fact that my reality was different from the reality that they were depicting on TV. So this is what they're saying. Doom and gloom, everyone's going to get sick and it's terrible. We've got to shut down the economy and we've got to lock everyone up for 2 weeks and we're going to flatten the curve and all that rubbish. But when I went outside, because everyone was locked down, but you could also go outside. So it didn't make any sense. My kids and I were outside. It was great. We're in March, like it was sunny days, some winter days, some rainy days, some sunny days, but we're just down the beach most of the time. I'm down the beach with 5,000 other people in the worst pandemic. This doesn't make any sense. So I started speaking out about it. And the more I spoke out about it, the more ostracized, the more isolated, the more like you're an idiot, the more get out of town. I went to rallies and all that kind of stuff. You're a menace to society. You shouldn't be here. I hope your kids get it. I hope you die. I hope you go to hospital and don't get any attention to it, all that kind of stuff. And I'd had that before. I'd had it in primary school. I had been bullied in high school. I'd had the ostracization before. I'd had the you're alone with maybe 5 friends feeling. So this is nothing new to me, but it lifted, it almost crushed me to the degree that I had no control. So there was like a life lesson where I'm always feeling like I'm in control of my own destiny, but here I am out of control. Like they're telling me what to do and there was nothing that I could do about it. So the more I spoke out about it, the more I was ostracized, the more I was vilified, but also more people were saying to me privately, I agree with you. I just don't have the opportunity to talk about it like you do because, I have business people, partnerships, all that kind of stuff that are saying, listen, you shouldn't be saying what you're saying because you're sending a bad message. People are not going to come to the business. You're affecting my business because I know you, so I'm guilty by association. Like there's so many layers to all of this.
Yeah.
Then I started thinking to myself, I'd already been interviewing people from a business perspective. I'd already been doing not so much a podcast, but I'd already been running interviews. I'd interviewed heaps of coaches on mindset and marketing and all those sorts of things. So I'm going to use that platform. I already had, 8,000 or 9,000 followers. So nothing massive, but I'm going to use that platform and I'm going to start to talk to experts that think like me. That way, it's not me saying it, it's them. Right? So if you've got an argument and you can say, well, talk to Peter McCullough about it, right? Because I just interviewed him. I didn't say that there's a solution to all these problems. We don't need to be locked down. Talk to Pierre Corey, talk to Robert F. Kennedy Jr., talk to all these people that I'm interviewing and argue with them. I can't be the only idiot here thinking that this is what is the right and wrong way to go about things because I'm interviewing experts around the world who are saying the exact same thing. So the reason why I tell you all of this is because you fast forward a year and a half or so, and I really put a lot of effort into making a stand for something that I truly believed in. And what it did for me was it deleted and eliminated all the people that didn't want to be associated with me, that didn't want to have anything to do with my perspective, that couldn't look beyond or accept me for my views, but still like me or love me anyway. But it also created this huge following, and in my world it's huge because I went from 8,000 or 9,000 followers to like 30. you know, and so it was like 30 and 35,000 and 40,000, and it just kept growing. And all of my podcasts were getting, 5,000 views, then 10,000 views, then 80,000, then 200,000, then 500,000. They were just going nuts until I got cancelled. So it taught me a number of different lessons, because then when you fast forward, I couldn't hold on to that business. All the while, there was things that were suffering from a relationship point of view that had already come undone. And it wasn't because of COVID. It was a number of things, but there was a number of catalysts along the way, and it kind of just separated with my kids, because they were like, I don't know why you're doing what you're doing. A lot of people just couldn't understand my position and why you would put your neck on the chopping block so many times just to get smashed. So now what I coach on is people starting again and finding their passion and purpose, because what that did for a lot of people, including me, was create a situation where they felt disconnected. They felt isolated. They felt like, well, if you don't think the way I think, and we've been friends and family for like my entire life, or 15 or 20 years, or we've been married for 20 years, then what the fuck am I doing? And where do I fit in this puzzle of life? So it caused me to then recalibrate and reset. And so many moments being down the beach and contemplating life and meditating and looking at all the loss and letting go of attachment to things and possessions and relationships and what I thought was like what I really loved or what I really liked. I realized that despite the path that I was on, I was at an end in time. I was at a death, and there's a number of deaths that were occurring. And I was lost for a while in trying to figure out how to recreate myself. So who am I now? Because the value systems that I thought I was applying my life to were values that were largely borrowed by other people, as in my mum and dad and society and the books I read and all that kind of stuff, but never really understanding what are my values right now? What are my belief systems right now? And how do I live congruently with that version of Adrian? So that's what I do now. Most people that come to me now, they say the same thing in many different ways, but it usually goes like, I know that I'm better than what I am, but I'm not living that version of myself. I'm stuck on a level, and I know that it's me that's making me stuck. I just don't know what part of me is making me stuck to get off that level. I can see and feel and sense that there's something that's just not quite gelling, but I don't know how to get past that. It's the adage of you're trying to read the label from the inside of the bottle. And you know as well as I do that it takes a lot of intuition, a lot of self-guidance, and a lot of learning how to read the signs and the signals and listening to the right authentic voice that's coming through, because the ego is cunning. The ego can mask itself as different voices and different reasoning and logics and all that kind of stuff. You don't realize sometimes that it's just masquerading as telling you to go back to the comfortable known and the familiar past and all those sorts of things. Whereas the authentic self always knows what to do, but we just we've been misguided onto how to listen to that voice. And it's just easier in most cases to listen to someone reflect what I'm doing, and then their perspective is reading the label from the outside of the bottle. So they have this 30,000 foot view, and I have coaches and mentors all the time, and I have had them for all my life. When you ask that first question about moments in time that I reflect on in life and things like that, that's another thing that a self-realization that I had not too long ago. I have had coaches all my life. I've had coaches in soccer, coaches in Taekwondo. When I did bodybuilding and I was like entering physique shows and all that kind of stuff, I had a coach. I was always looking to mentors, to guidance, and all those sorts of how to do stuff. So if it wasn't in a book, if it was a physical coach. And so I would always look to someone who'd gone through the things that I've gone through. Yeah, it's like standing on the shoulders of giants, right? They've just been there before you. And that's a large part of everything that I do now is helping people see that there are answers within inside themselves. And there are certain blockages and limitations that are self-limitations that they may not be aware. And once I get them to be aware of what they are, I can guide them to the point where they can be their own self-resilient, their own guiding light. And they just need the directions and the little nuances on how to get there. Once they kind of know the how, then they can figure out how to get past stumbling blocks. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point you mentioned there about mentors and coaches. It's something I think is almost lacking today. Like I think if you look back to the tribes, like when we're in cavemen and stuff, we always had chiefs and elders and whatnot, and we'd always have our guidance from a line of authority. And I think like if you put soccer coaches into perspective, for example, like you look at David Beckham. He's one of the best soccer players ever to have played, but he still has a coach. Is the coach better at playing soccer than him? Probably not, but he has a different perspective. And I think that's a really important part. And Tizzy mentioned that on this podcast too. He said, get advice from someone else because they might see something that you're missing. And a lot of the time, that's like what you just said. We can read the bottle from the inside out, and they're experiencing it from the inside. The other way around. Outside in, and they're experiencing it from the inside out.
Yeah.
So you help people be aware of their limiting beliefs and their self-sabotaging behaviors. What are they?
For any individual, it can be a number of things. Mm-hmm. But what they mostly are is a limitation on their capability, almost like a scotoma on or a blind spot that they can't see past the limitation. They feel like the limitation is finite. As in, it's just, there's nothing that I can do. That's just the way I am. You know, it's a genetic predisposition, so to speak. You know, it's just like my dad was like this or my mum was like that. You know, all of those typical, stereotypical sort of things is what they go through. But mostly, it's a self-imposed restriction on just how great they are. How much potential that they have and how much they're leaving on the table. I'll give you an example. I had a client recently who was in the healing space and was expressing that she had some limitations around money and that she was wanting to expand her coaching but to like a worldwide audience, not just something that was local. And one of the biggest catalysts that she spoke about after our coaching was I went through a process with her where I just said, if you're looking for permission, I'll give it to you. So like it sounds like on a level, you don't feel like you're deserving of anything beyond what you've already created. So if you're looking for permission for that, to deserve more, I'm giving it to you right now. And I mean, like there's much more to it, but that's essentially what it was. Self-imposed limitation. I don't deserve. Now, I don't deserve comes from a lot of things that could be imposed through childhood and things like that. But once you work past I deserve, I'm open to, I allow, like it's, you know, the world is a not either or, it's a yes and. You know, it's abundant in everything. Like there's no shortage of food or water or money. Like at any one time now, people like to go on about finances and career and business and money and things like that. At any one time, right this minute, you and I might be worried about a bill that we got coming up, or we might be worried about, or we might be thinking it'd be nice to, I don't know, let's get an awesome studio, but we need probably like 10 grand or 15 grand to sort of set that out, right? And so that could be a limitation in terms of where we're at the moment, for argument's sake. Mm-hmm. But there's someone right now who's probably spending 150 grand on a watch and not flinching an eye. Like it's just not No questions about it. At any one time right now, there is so much money running through everyone's bank accounts, everyone's wallets, they're changing the ashtrays of their car. Like, it's already there. It's already been created. It's already been printed. It's already in existence. So what more do I have to do to create more money that's already been created? So that's a self-limitation. The answer is everything that I ever wanted is already been created. There's nothing I need to do except allow myself to experience abundance. So with this client again, she had this self-imposed limitation on what she was capable of, and whether if she did put her coaching ability out to the world, that maybe someone may not see value. And I merely just invited her to maybe look in the past as to how many people she could have helped or has helped already. And was there anyone that said, hey, listen, I don't like your coaching. You've done the worst job for me. As a matter of fact, I'm worse now than what I was when I started. And she said, no. As a matter of fact, most people say thank you, and I really appreciate everything that you've done for me. So I go, there's no evidence to suggest that what you're saying is actually even true. Because everything you told me about, I'm worried about what people might think, or how it might go. Like, this is an unknown thing to you, but you're putting so much fear and limitation on the unknown. But what is the known? The known is everyone said you're great. So you're lying to yourself, and you're lying to others because you're not congruent with the values that you're already coaching on. Like, you're coaching on expansiveness, on growth, on prosperity, on limiting beliefs. But here's a limiting belief that you haven't overcome. So stop fucking lying to yourself. Right? You are a liar. You're false. So are you, it's very confronting. But like, are you willing to confront that you are in fact right now living out of alignment with your own values? And if the answer is yes, then what's it going to take for you to live a life congruent with those values and beliefs? So now you're embodying everything that you speak about. And just merely putting herself into a future version of herself that was everything that she wanted in life was the catalyst to opportunity that was almost instant.
Powerful.
More coaching clients, more bulk sessions, people from overseas paying larger rates, all that kind of stuff, only because the leap that she took was old paradigm, new paradigm, old version of yourself, new version of yourself. Right? Living incongruent, out of alignment, living congruent in alignment, embodying who you are and what you do and what you say. You look in this space, in coaching space and stuff like that, there's a lot of people that have a persona that is business. And when you see them out and about, and if you're lucky enough to witness something in person, or you see them in their personal lives, it's totally different. They don't embody the things that they teach. They live out of alignment. They have this showmanship on this side, and they have all this underlying issues on the other side. I just come from a position of, listen, man, I'm one guy. I make shit tons of mistakes, right? I learn from those mistakes, and my growth period right up until this point is to bring myself in alignment. And people resonate with that alignment because I just don't hold any punches. And I will tell you anything that goes wrong in my life or right, and tell you all of my mistakes and things like that. So I think when people are looking towards what is it that is holding me back, it's merely a perception of who they are in this very moment versus who they want to become in the future.
And so when it comes to removing that limiting belief, it's about aligning more with who you want to be in the future, and looking at what's not in alignment. So where do these limiting beliefs come from then? Do they come from what we're told as a child? Do they come from past bad experiences? Or how do we form these lies about ourselves that ultimately hold us back from achieving what we want? Because as you just identified with that client there, what she was believing was actually false. So she was believing a lie that was holding her back.
Correct.
Wow. So how do we?
So there's a number of things, and really it does stem from childhood a lot. Who you model from as a child. So whether you grew up with your parents or whether you grew up with your grandparents or whatever caregiver, whoever you had a aspiration to looking up to, or you were led by, or you were just, that was your environment, you learn by osmosis. And so there could be a number of things. You could learn your self-worth from your parents, and they may go through situations where in order to get respect, my dad yells and screams, right? So anger must mean love. Or when my mum sacrifices herself for everyone else in the family, service is love. So what I do as a child is I then tend to look towards my father, for example, of like, I want to perform or I want to do things, right? So I have memories like of a child where I would do something and look back to see whether my dad was looking for approval, right? Because I never had the approval and the attention that I needed as a child. So then I grow up with the need, the hole that needs to be filled as an adult, and I'm just looking through like an adult's eyes with a child's version of love. So they're the things that mostly hold people back, what they learn. It's circumstances, situations, things, just events that might happen in their lives. And it could be anything. It could be something that happened to you just recently. You were telling me about your accident and a few things that happened with you. That could lead you to have a belief system that could impose some limitations. But the catalyst was that event. So what you told me, if you don't mind me sharing this, right, was that you had an incident and there was an accident there. You went to hospital, you broke your back and your leg and all that kind of stuff. So there's two lessons that could be learned there. And I don't know much more about the story other than you could have learned that taking risks, doing things outside of the norm, just saying yes to things where you really said no, all that kind of what really meant no, was the wrong thing to do. And so the best thing for you to do going forward is to play small and to play safe. Go get a safe, secure job. Just stay within the lines and just don't do anything outside of the realms of what would be considered normal, because bad stuff happens when you do that.
Gotcha. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We have these things that happen and then we act and we don't know why we're acting that way, but that makes a lot of sense. I get it.
But you didn't do it, right? You were like, there's these things that have happened in my life. It's caused me to maybe take stock on the things that I'm doing, the actions that I'm taking. Perhaps I'm running in the wrong direction. Maybe I should change a few things about my outlook on things. I need to heal. I need to get better. I need to have an able body. There are lessons and things that I need to share with people, because I think this is a really good opportunity for me to grow as a person. But if I'm growing, I want other people around me to grow as well. Who am I going to surround myself with? I'm going to surround myself with people that are like me. And I want to grow and I want to expand my knowledge. I want to share it with as many people that are happy to listen, all that kind of stuff. Let's just start a podcast. So,
yeah, pretty bang on with what happened there.
Got it?
Yeah.
So it's like, it could be anything. A lot of people go on about childhood wounds and trauma bonding and all that kind of stuff. They're definitely a real thing. Attachment styles, it's all a part of it. Your relationships, how you interpret emotions and feelings. And we learned a lot of that from our parents. This means love. This means anger. This means hate. This is what it means for me to be loved, to feel needed, to feel wanted, to feel belonging, all those sorts of things. That's a part of it. But certain catalysts in life can change the paradigm of the way you see the world. And so it could be anything. What it comes down to, in essence, is the self-awareness. So when I speak to values and belief systems and those limiting beliefs and things like that, do you know what the biggest healing growth curve you'll go through? It's just simply becoming aware of them.
That's the hardest part, right?
Well, yes and no. So it's the hardest part, I believe, because the perception is that I don't want to face my demons for something that I'm going to be confronted with that I'm not going to like about myself. So if I hate myself, well, where does that leave me? This is the only body I've got in the mind, and I don't like anything about it. So it really is confronting to realize that by looking at myself internally, I could be faced with things about myself that I don't really like. But when you said before, you mentioned something about the growing through darkness and things like that. Well, yeah, metaphorically, like everything starts as a seed in darkness, in the soil, like underneath. It's only when it starts to sort of sprout and see sunlight that it can then grow and blossom, right? So it's just like all of that stuff is made in the darkness. But the moment that you become aware is akin to shining a light on the problem. And when you shine a light on the problem doesn't seem as big. Is that your experience?
Yes, definitely.
Right? I've got this big, dark, dirty secret. Yeah, I watch shit tons of porn. This is the style that I like, or the rest. I wouldn't tell that to anyone that I know that would judge and ridicule me for fear and shame and guilt and worry and all that kind of stuff inside me. The moment you go, hey, this is everything that I've been doing and I'm going to change, right? It's just like a...
Yeah, it's so true. Actually, I just did a shame circle at a men's retreat run by Jacob O'Neill.
Yeah.
And so he warmed us up, and pretty much we went around and just kind of put something in the circle verbally that we were shameful about. And I was sweating. I was like, I can't say this. Everyone's going to like think I'm a weirdo. Everyone's going to hate on me. And then I said it, and everyone just sat there.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, well, no one actually cares. And it was like I felt 10 kilos lighter.
Yeah. And that's my experience. It's my personal experience, and it's my experience when I take people through all of those realizations of just shining the light. And again, when it comes back to just people having someone with them to show them that this is the next step that you go through, a lot of people start with the dream in mind, like the end in mind. This is where I want to go. It's the ultimate goal. But you know that the ultimate goal comes with 1,000 steps before that. So my job is just to help you go to like step 1 and then 2 and then 3 and then beyond that. Because if I take you from current reality to dream, the experience in between of that is all the lessons. It's all the learning and all the growth. So all the shadow stuff, all the dark stuff, all the realization, the self-realization of these are the parts that I have hidden away from everyone else, including myself, and tucked away and didn't do anything about it. And now it's festering, showing up in injuries. It's showing up in gut issues. It's showing up in acne. It's showing up in, whatever it is, back problems, all that kind of stuff, relationship issues, loss of money. Like it's showing up all over the place. So it's just signals and signs and you need to address this. And when you address it, in my experience, there is a period of like, this is unfamiliar. It's uncomfortable. I don't like this new version of me. I am feeling like a bit of a fish out of water if it doesn't feel normal, because I've been used to this version of me for a while now. The more you live in congruent, the more you live in alignment with your values and your belief systems, the more you align yourself with other people who are similar to you, call you out on your bullshit, help you lift you up, drive you to become a better person. The more you catch yourself out, the more you go, not good enough, not my standard, not the version of Adrian. This is not my reality. I don't accept this reality right now. This is the version that I'm going towards. It's just like a muscle. You build it, it grows, it tears down, it builds up again. And eventually you just get stronger and you're in that version of yourself until the next version of yourself is required. Right?
Yeah.
And it's just always like ladders of success.
Yeah. So for maybe someone who's looking to cultivate their dream, maybe they're not actually sure where they want to go. How do you help them find their purpose? Because I understand that can be a tough task for most.
Yeah. You need to know your values. So a value is what's important to you. And it's not just a value in health or in wealth or in relationships, but it's like everything. Is it travel? Is it intimate relationships, your children, friends and family, material possessions, interests and hobbies, like all domains of life? What are my values in that area? What is most important to me in all of those areas? And then you can take it a step further. You can say, out of these values, what is the most important of those values?
So should people just list as many values as they like, or should there be like, maybe, do you recommend 10 values that are like your overall and then 3 top ones?
Yeah, I like to drill it down to about 5 and then work out the hierarchy of those values. Because a lot of people in relationships will say, like, love is the most important to me. And then I'll say, okay, that's fine. But if I could give you, for example, if you had love and respect, if I could give you love but disrespect, which would you choose? Right? Or I'll give you respect but no love. Right? So all of a sudden, it's a juxtaposition that people find that they really need to consider. Well, I don't want to be disrespected. So, okay, well, maybe respect is higher than love. Right? So if I could give you respect and no appreciation, or no sexual intimacy, right? Or sexual intimacy and disrespect, what would you choose? So all of a sudden we start to see a shift in the hierarchy of values. And these are critical steps because now you're getting to know yourself. You're getting to know the blueprint of how Kata operates.
Powerful.
And then you start to say, how do I align myself with everything that I do in life, with the values that I have right now? Because to have a value of being respected means you need to be respectful. The mirror of having a value in intimacy and connection and growth means that it's not just something that you receive, it's something that you give. So you can't have a value of, I want to be respected, but be disrespectful to others. Because the universe will always mirror what is not showing up in your life or what's lacking in your life. You start having a lot of people disrespect you, shortchange you, all those sorts of things. Not appreciate not appreciate a certain aspect of you or a viewpoint or whatever. You're like, well, maybe one of my values is acceptance. One of my values is vulnerability without judgment. Vulnerability without shame or guilt. Like, can I express myself to someone, if we're talking like in an intimate relationship, without that thing coming back to bite me in a future argument or something that goes wrong down the track? But you will only ever know that when you're vulnerable without fear of guilt and judgment. And then when you attract someone who's vulnerable without fear of guilt and judgment, now you've got this outgrowth, which is respect and connection and growth. And what is the fruits of all of those values? Well, it's love. Unconditional love. A lot of people say it's love without conditions. Oh, well, there's a few conditions, right? I have values and I have belief systems, I have needs and all of these things melded together. And I want to project that version of myself to the world, and I want to be reciprocated in the same way.
So to give us an example, what would be your 5 values?
Okay, so I think the best way to answer that is in every domain of life, they're different.
Gotcha.
Right?
Yep.
So in terms of how I view the world, how I carry myself, and the version of Adrian that I want to project in the world, I value growth as a person, and I value contribution. I value learning. I value teaching. And I value, I'd say health is an overarching value, but underneath that is vitality, energy, all those sorts of things. Right? But a value can be anything that you want. So, for example, the value of mine is it's like doing whatever I want.
Freedom.
Yeah. So you might call it freedom.
Yep.
And other people might call it choices. And I think where the people come undone with a lot of values is they go love, respect, honesty, all these sort of like typical values that might spring to mind. But I think the value can be whatever you like it to be. And it needs to be articulated in a way that means something to you. So I like to do whatever the fuck I like. And it's not like I do it in spite of you or regardless of whether you think or anything like that. But I just like to do the things that I like to do. I speak my mind. I'd like to control, I shouldn't say control. I like to create a life that is conducive with how I want to direct it.
That makes a lot of
And
sense.
if people say you should do it this way, I'll listen to anyone. I'm happy to lend anyone's advice and look to models and coaches and all that kind of stuff. But I'll take everything out of that and say, how does that relate to the kind of life that I want to lead? And so the caveat is that most people listen to others and do what they say versus listening to others and go, what's right for me? Like what do I do? How does that apply to my life?
So that shows how those two values work together then.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I think we might jump into rapid fire round now if you're
Go for it.
cool to do with that, Adrian.
Yeah.
So as I said, these the goal is to answer these in under a minute. It's actually interesting because I wrote these before I sat down with you today, and they're all pretty on par with what we've talked about today.
Nice.
So the first one, how do you deal with failure and setbacks?
I always deal with it on reflecting on what is the lesson I need to learn. That's how I deal with it. It's like, show me the lesson that I need to learn. Show me the lesson that I haven't learned yet. What is it that I need to know in order to prevent this from happening again or not repeating the same mistake?
Love it. What's a life skill you believe everyone should learn and why?
Communication, talking, like all that kind of stuff, I think is a huge life skill. Being able to articulate and express yourself in a way that other people can understand and appreciate where you're coming from, speaking your voice, your truth. I think it's super important. I think a lot of people just hold a lot of things back for fear of being judged. And if they only just use their voice in a constructive way, I think we'd all be much better off because we could just, communicate a lot more effectively. So communication for sure.
We could be real. Yeah. I love it. What's a societal issue you believe needs more attention and awareness?
Emotional intelligence for sure. There's a lot of people out there that are very, quote unquote wounded. They've been hurt by others. They've had situations in life which are not the best. And, I've spoken about a few moments in my life, but they might pale in comparison to somebody else's hard times. But having the emotional intelligence to deal with those situations is a critical and powerful thing to have. I think when you look at a lot of the conflict in the world at the moment, there is a lot can be said about people's capacity to not speak from a position of like emotional spillover. They're just projecting and voicing their opinions based on fear-based emotions and all that kind of stuff. So I think emotional intelligence, 100%.
I agree with that one. Yeah. 3 quick tips for someone who's looking for purpose.
Self-reflect on the things that you do well throughout life. There is a lot to be said about just casting your mind back in time and thinking about the things that you do well. So I've given you an example already with me. it really comes down to like teaching. So it's a really good thing a really good tool to reflect, and that'd be the first tip. There are driving forces within you that I think people need to start to acknowledge and become familiar with. Because purpose doesn't necessarily mean that I need to be paid for that purpose. I can have a purpose in life that is unpaid, and I think that that's a distinction that needs to be said, that needs to be made. Because a lot of people confuse, I want to be passionate, I want to be on purpose, but I also want to be like paid for that thing. And it's great when it happens, but it doesn't mean that you can't be on purpose and passionate about many things that are not like career driven or anything like that. But those signs are the things that light you up, that make you come alive, the things that you can do for hours and hours and you lose time, and the things that you can do where you like, you don't eat and you don't notice that you're hungry because you're just enthralled and, in that thing. So I think it's worthwhile reflecting on what that is for you. And that would definitely lead you to finding a passion and a purpose, because underneath purpose is meaning, underneath meaning is contribution, and underneath contribution is being valued. And I think if you start to scrape beneath the layers of like why people do their passion and why they find purpose, is because underneath that is meaning and being valued and being appreciated. Like, I think we all desire to be valued in some way, shape or form. Yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. I like it. What's one of the most challenging things you've had to overcome?
Two things come to mind. The loss of my marriage, or the decision to end the marriage, was a huge thing. It required a lot of self-reflection, and for me to really be honest and clear in my mind as to what direction I was going to go in. Losing the business, that destroyed a part of a persona, I guess, that I thought was important. So it's like a part of myself that I was holding on to, like a certain level of identity. So letting go of that. And I think another one that needs to be mentioned is just illness and internal suffering, like through the whole this past couple of years. I think there were very testing times, and I feel like I've been through a lot already. And it tested my resolve until like to no end. So it's not like I had a point of checking out, but I did have many points of total confusion and loss and not knowing which direction to go in, and feeling out of control in terms of I couldn't rein back feelings, emotions, thoughts, just things that were just like running through my mind that were racy and fear of the future, and just causing heart palpitations, just like lots of bodily stuff that was just just making me very sickly and all those sort of things. They were really three things that were kind of like right together. That's why I feel like it's worth mentioning all of them. Because it kind of seemed like one after another. It was like, what the fuck, but it was they were life lessons. They were lessons to really show me that what I think I'm capable of is far less than what I actually am.
What you think you're capable of is far less than what you actually are now?
It's like what I think I'm capable of is it's it's far less than what I actually am capable of. Does that make sense? My level of what I'm capable of doing based on the things that I've been through, especially in the last couple of years, it's almost like that's not even the base of the mountain.
Oh, okay.
My truest potential is like there, and I've been playing too small for too long.
Gotcha.
That's my perception of
No,
of
I thought you were
things.
saying the other way around. You were aiming too high. I was like, oh.
No.
Yeah.
No, like playing way too small. Yeah.
I look
And
forward.
giving too much weight to those things, as like I said at the beginning of the podcast, like it's not a finite thing. It's not the end. It's a problem or a situation or an event or a, it's a issue right now, but it's not forever. And so going through it seems like it's forever.
It does, yeah.
Or this is the end of it. If I can't make it now, then when can I make it? So yeah, in self-reflection, it's just I now have like so much energy and passion and exuberance and zest for life and to make shit happen, right? More than ever before. And I feel like the capacity that I was running at was what I thought was like maybe 80 or 90% was truly only like 20 or 30%. So, and that's probably, giving myself a leg up. But it's really just by comparison to your peers.
Gotcha. I got you.
It's not by comparison to what your truest potential is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So if anyone was to say, listen, I like the way you're going with things, but, like, here's your level of potential and this is where you're playing right now, and you think that that's like the top.
If you could have any historical figure on your podcast, who would it be?
I remember you reading that out before. I've been thinking about it this whole time.
It's a fun question.
It is. I don't know about historical figure, but there are people that I really like. And so it probably may go without saying for people that know how I run my podcast and how conversational it is. But I really think to get someone on like a Joe Rogan or a JP Spears or a Tim Ferriss or an Anthony Robbins, like I think those kind of guys, I don't know, I think they're just like, they're really cool cats. It'd just be it'd be really fun to kind of like have a good conversation with them and just see where things flow. So I think that'll be the best way I can answer that.
What is the most important quality a person can cultivate for their own growth?
Authenticity. Yeah. Once you know yourself, again, like we're just repeating like the same thing right to the whole thing, right?
Yeah, I thought that.
Yeah, like you get to know yourself. You understand how you operate, the good and the bad. You self-reflect. You live your life congruently with the version that you want to portray in the world. And you live authentically towards that. Like everything will fall into place and everything that's not meant to be just won't. And the acceptance of what that is just what it is. Yeah. So I think authenticity is a quality that I think people are afraid to express most of the time. Or they just don't even know what that is because they're just constantly borrowing behaviors and models, from other people that they think is like the right thing to do.
I can relate to that a lot. So that's been what I've been focusing on the last few months is being more authentic. I think when I went to school, I put this mask on. When I come home, put this mask on. When I go to the pub, put this mask on. And so it's like learning. Well, if I'm not changing my mask, then who's under the mask? And that can be hard, right? It takes time. So I think that's a really good point you made there. You've interviewed quite some big names on your podcast. What's been one of your greatest learnings from running this podcast?
Yeah, I know that answer straight away. The answer is that you think that by asking someone, like I had Robert Kennedy Jr. on my podcast.
Big name.
It's a big name. Even bigger now than what it was in like 2021 when I interviewed him. I interviewed him before Rogan did.
Wow.
Right? I interviewed McCullough before Rogan did. So like there's a few little like, sounds like a flex, but to me it's only in my mind. No one else may appreciate exactly what it is. But the thing is that I am just like one guy from Wollongong who like, I'm just nobody. You know what I mean? Like, and I mean that in a sense of, I'm a speck on this earth, and to ask someone like that to be on the show and they just say yes, like it's an incredible thing. I think for people that might be listening and saying, you know what, I've got something that I'd like to share with the world, and I wouldn't mind doing something like this, or just I wouldn't mind doing something with my life in whatever path, and I just need to ask a question. So in my world, it's like, would you like to come on the podcast? And that's it. And it's just putting it out there. So most of the time people say yes, and I just find it fascinating. People will go, I don't know how you got that person to come on the show. And, look, maybe they don't know anything about the show or how big or how small or whatever it is, but over a period of time, I got a long list of really big names.
Yeah, you do.
And it just looks impressive over time as that grows. I get more and more people, and then you find that a lot of these people are also connected to each other. So, like I recently, in the last couple of months, I interviewed Kashif Khan, and he's the author of The DNA Way, and he does a lot of stuff around DNA and all those sorts of things. It's really fascinating stuff. When I sent him the email and I had this like proposal of like, come on the show and these are the guests that I've had, he just wrote back, he goes, I got a lot of friends on that guest list. So it's almost like an easy yes for them. So like, man, if they're on the show, then I'll be on the show.
Gotcha.
But, when I started, it's like, not to poo-poo any of the names that I've had on at all, but some of them are well known and some of them aren't. But some of them are just really cool people, and some like got really interesting stories, and they're just nice to talk to. Like, yeah. So the lesson is, or the takeaway is like, just don't be afraid to ask the question.
Gotcha.
Yeah, like I've already asked JP Spears and Anthony Robbins and Robert Kiyosaki and all the people that I liked, even bodybuilders I used to revere back in the day and all that kind of stuff. It's like, I don't give a fuck. If they say yes, great, I'll interview them. If they say no, like, what happens to me? Nothing. Just keep motoring on and keep going. So I think it's fascinating. I'm always like blown away. And I don't know if you listen to anyone, like sometimes you go sort of like balls deep on a particular person or a genre, and you kind of listen to them all the time, and you feel like you know their voice. When you read their books, their voice is in your head, like reading the words. You listen to heaps of podcasts, you're watching them, so you're very familiar with them. So I get to the point now where some of those people are on the show, and I'm just like, I'm talking to a mate.
Yeah, because you feel like you know them.
Yeah, that's right. It's like, you get the jitters at the beginning and stuff like that. And sometimes I do at the beginning. But most of the time, if it's like that, I'm just like, oh, I can't wait to talk to Carter, because, like you've been in my car for the last, like 6 months. I've been listening to hours of your conversations, that kind of stuff. So I'm so familiar with it. It just seems like, I'm having a Zoom chat with a friend.
Yeah, cool. And the closing question on this podcast is, if someone could do one practical tool to help individuals and society, have a positive impact on individuals and society, what would that be?
Wow. As cliche as it sounds, I think everyone has a unique talent or gift. And I just think it's a travesty that if you have a unique talent or gift and you're the only person that is aware of it, like that's a shame. So if you could just do one thing, it would be to A, discover what that is, and B, just showcase it and share it with others and impact others with it. If it's something that you do exceptionally well, there's no doubt that someone else will find value in it.
You hear that, people? Share the gift. Share your gift with the world. It's a big one.
Amen.
Well, Adrian, if people want to know more about you, your coaching, your podcast, where can they find you?
You can hit me up on just about any social media platform. Adrain D'Amico on Facebook, and Adrian D'Amico on Instagram. My Conversations with Adrian podcast is on Spotify, so you can go and search it there. But any way, shape or form, like through all of those avenues, you'll be able to find another way to contact me, message me, email me, all that kind of stuff up there. So I'll be more than happy for people to go and find me there and maybe have listened to a couple of podcasts or two.
Yeah, I'll put all of that in the show notes as well so that
Beautiful.
you can see it all. Thank you for coming on today, Adrian. The conversation's been great. I've learned a lot.
Thank you. I really appreciate this opportunity. I think it's been a great conversation. It's been great to be like on this other side of the mic, so to speak. So thank you, man. Thank you for all the work that you're doing. Thank you, mate.
Thanks, Adrian.